We've answered all the questions. In some cases, that's even more important than the content. So it's always balancing the content and following the instructions. And then finally, I just wanted to add one thing. Your proposals are peer reviewed, typically by people in your industry and your discipline. They're reviewed by staff. On the peer review side, where do you think people are when they're reviewing these proposals? You think they're sitting at a desk, reviewing the proposals?
On the couch.
In bed.
In bed.
So don't make it difficult for a reviewer. Follow the instructions. Lay it out exactly the way they're asking for it.
Yeah. Subheadings, numbers,
right.
Bullet points.
We call it reverse engineering, but you can have the most brilliant content. If you don't structure your proposal accordingly, you know, you may not get funding.
Yeah.
So.
And Lori said something else which is very important, which I don't have in this presentation, but I should add it. Jump at the occasion to serve on a review committee. Jump on it. Volunteer for it. When you've been on the other side of a grant proposal, when you get to sit down and see 10 proposals written, you will know what a good proposal looks like, and you will start developing a sense of like, why do I like this one so much? Why is it easier to read? Why does it stand out? And the truth is, I was lucky enough to work for the National Endowment for the Arts, and I was doing grant support when we would bring in panels to review applications for funding. And I remember it was almost painful to see how quickly you could tell people have been working on this for months and people who had put it together in the last weekend. So clear. It was so clear. And yet I think the people who had put it together at the last moment thought like, oh, but we worked so hard, and this is the best that we can do. Or maybe they didn't think so, but they thought it was good enough to send in, and that was not good enough. When you're competing with people that have put in a lot of effort. So if you get a chance to be on a committee, do that, because they'll give you an experience of what makes it easy, what looks good, what stands out. Okay, here we come to the core of this presentation, which is definitions and concepts. If you're not clear about something that I'm talking about, please raise your hand and stop me so I can go over it again. So most of the grant work is divided between pre-award and post-award. And it's important because, well, one is everything that you do up to submission, and the other is the happy moment of when you get funded and you start spending the money. So it's important because it's different offices at UIC are involved in it. So pre-award is the work that goes into a grant proposal before and up to submission. And the office that's in charge of it is the Office of Research Services in OVCR. They will be the ones that you send this proposal to, and they will approve it and either send it on or give you permission to send it off yourself. So this is the part where you work with a research institute or a business manager in your office and get support and package it, and then it's sent off. And post-award is really interesting because you should be able to see less of the details of it. There should be at UIC a business manager or a grant accountant that's working with your grant. And that's when you find out that all the things you thought you could do with this grant are illegal and unavailable to you at UIC. Pretty much the business manager will set up your account, submit the financial reports, oversee the spending to make sure that you don't spend in a category that's not allowed or that you don't go over. And then they will look through, see it through to final close down. And the office is Office of Grants and Contracts, which is actually part of the Business and Financial Services. It's not even related to the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research. They work together. They could do a better job at working together. So usually it's your business manager that will work with GCO. You will probably have very few contacts with them. Okay, so that was the easy. Okay, ICR. So ICR goes by a lot of names. it's indirect costs, it's F&A, facilities and administration, and overhead. All of these things mean exactly the same thing. So most commonly people call it ICR or indirect cost. And this strikes a very emotional chord with researchers. Why? Because you get $1.5 million in funding. Half of that, $500,000 goes to UIC. That's money that you will not spend. That's because your grant is made up of two major, like a standard federal grant, is made up of two major parts. One is direct cost, DC, direct cost. That's the money for you to spend on your project. The other part, which is usually a smaller part, it's a third, is indirect cost. And so people get emotional about it because they think, oh, the university is taking my money from my grant. But the truth is, and this is how I explain it to people, what is indirect? What is ICR? ICR is the money that the university spends when you spend $1 in doing research. So you come in the morning, you're working on your grant, on your grant project, it's been funded. You come in, you spend $1 on that grant. The university, at the same time that you're spending that $1, is spending 59 cents for the lights and the bathrooms and the parking and the facilities and the business manager that helped you put together and the Office of Research Support and all the people that were involved and the structures that were involved in getting your grant to UIC and managing it and closing it down and spending it. So I can see why people get like emotional and upset about ICR, but really it's part of what allows you to have your research run at UIC. Now, 59 cents for each dollar. Some people might say that's a lot of money. Now, Urbana is 63, so let's not complain too much. Now, the truth is that usually only federal grants pay full ICR, and private foundations usually will say we only pay 10% ICR. They don't pay the 59% rate. They pay 10 or 20, and the university will take whatever amount a foundation says they will give. They will be grumpy about it because they want the full amount, but they will take. Now, what happens to ICR? So your grant comes in. It's $1.5 million, or let's say $150,000, because $1.5 million feels like a lot of money. So $100,000 of that grant is yours to spend. You had your budget that totaled up $100,000. It's your salary, your research assistants, your travel, your equipment. Now, the $50,000 are siphoned off to UIC. Where does that money go? It actually recirculates to, some of it recirculates to your department and your college. So in roughly, it could be different for different colleges, but roughly 50% go to university administration, 30% goes to the college, and 20% goes to your department. And if you are in multiple departments, then you might have split that amount. So if you have a split appointment, for example, sociology and African American studies, then maybe that 20% then gets divided between them. So some researchers are very smart and go to their department and say, well, I'm applying for this grant, and it will pay a lot of ICR. So some of that ICR will come back to the department. Maybe out of that money, you guys can give me a research assistant. So you can make a case for yourself that by applying and getting this grant, you're bringing so much money into the department, every year for 3 years or whatever the duration of the grant, that you can negotiate some of that back to you. So the $1 million grant, as I said, if you look at it, 2/3 is your direct cost, yours to spend, and then $371 in indirect costs. Now you can, by the puzzle in the room, you can see why I say that you need somebody to help you set up your budget. Fringe benefit, yes.
I've seen where the university will hire a new faculty member, and if this faculty member is what they call a star faculty member, it's not uncommon for that faculty member to negotiate when they're hired that all of the ICR comes back to them.
Wow.
So I've seen that happen,
Yeah.
and it's quite a coup.
Yeah, it's
Brings
quite
back
a
a lot
cool.
of
Yeah, that's something that if you know that your research will depend on a lot of federal funding, it's something that to think about to negotiate that. There was at some point at UIC, the Department of Sociology that I was very familiar with, they would give 50% of the ICR that came to the department from your grant would give half of that back to the researcher's account. So that was an incentive for people to bring in grants because some of that money would rotate back to them. Fringe benefits. So fringe benefits are things like our health insurance, our dental insurance, our life insurance, workers' comp, etc. And usually when you get paid by UIC in your regular salary, the university pays for those and you don't even know and you don't even see it. But the moment that you have a grant paid for a portion of your salary, the university says, well, the grant, the federal government or the foundation is paying for your salary, why should we pay for your benefits, right? Makes sense. So the university requires you to add fringe benefits to your grant budget so that that foundation will also pay for your fringe benefits. It's a huge amount of money. So if you think about it, if your grant is, if your 1 year salary is $100,000, you have to add 38% of fringe benefits. All of a sudden, just your salary and benefits is 138. Then you add the indirect costs, we're talking 175,000, and we haven't even started talking about project expenses. Tuition remission. Okay, this is another thing that needs to be added to your budget. So the reason why I'm going through these is that sometimes people come to me and they say, I just need very little money to do this. Then we sit down and they want 2 course release, so that's salary and benefits. Then they want 2 graduate students, then that's salary, benefits, and tuition remission. Then you total it all up, and then you add indirect costs, and we are asking for $250,000. And the person thought, oh, it's easily a $75,000 grant. So the numbers just balloon because of all of these things that are required on the budget. But remember, these are all important things, like the university couldn't operate without them. For example, tuition remission is required on your budget because when you hire a graduate student on your grant, the student will get a tuition waiver because it's usually an assistantship that you give to your student. The tuition waiver means that the student is not paying tuition, which is great. We want to support our graduate students. But the university is then missing that tuition. So because you brought in a grant, now all of a sudden there's students who are not paying tuition but are taking classes. So what the university requires you to do is to add an amount to your grant that is called tuition remission, and that money will then go to the university. Interestingly, that money is then divided up just like ICR was. Some of it goes to administration, some of it comes to the college, some of it comes to your department. So a little bit of that trickles back. Any questions on tuition remission? Yes.
Is there a threshold for that so that if you're hiring someone on a weekly basis or for a limited number of hours, it's not triggered?
Correct. So it's only for research assistantships, and usually you don't put teaching assistantships on a grant, but research assistantships and GA-ship, you have to put tuition remission, but if you're hiring somebody graduate hourly, then you don't have to add tuition remission. And if you are hiring somebody for less than the 90 days per semester, which is the amount that people qualify for a tuition waiver, then you don't have to add it.
Is there a number of hours to associate with that per week?
So yes, so the assistantship has to be between 25%, which is 10 hours a week, and 67%, which is some other number up. And if it's lower or higher, then there is no tuition waiver associated, then you don't have to add it. Also in summer, a lot of students receive an automatic tuition waiver because they had an assistantship in spring. So if you're only hiring for summer, then even if you give an assistantship, you don't have to add tuition remission to your budget. Okay, subcontra and subaward, same word, different agencies use them. It's the same concept, but different agencies use different words. So say you are collaborating with a faculty member from another university. You have two choices. You can hire them as a consultant on your grant. So you put down that Professor so-and-so from University of Chicago will receive $10,000 as a consulting agreement. Easy, no problem. But some faculty members prefer to have that not come to them as income, but to come to their university, especially if they want course release. So in that case, if your colleague at another university will, needs course release or will hire a graduate student at their university, you can't just send them a check, like a personal check. So what you need to do is set up an agreement between the two universities. When the money comes in for your grant, a portion of that is sent off to another university, and it becomes a mini grant. It becomes really a subaward, which is, it looks just the same. So it will have the same things that it has here: indirect cost, tuition remissions, benefits and things like that. So if you want to hire a faculty member to work on your project from University of Chicago, and they are okay being a consultant, it might cost you $10,000. That same $10,000, if you want to pay that as a subcontract to University of Chicago, will have benefits added to it and their own indirect costs. So it might become $50,000. So that's something to consider. And the same thing applies to you. Somebody approaches you and says, I want to be on my grant proposal. We should collaborate on this. Then your choice is, do I want this money to come to me as a consultant, or do I want this money to come through UIC and be set up here as a subaward? Again, what we talked about in the beginning, you have to make your choices tax-wise, spending-wise. If you want course release, it needs to be coming to UIC. Cost share. Cost share sometimes gives me makes me skip a beat in my heart, because that's when that little line that says that the grant will cover 75% of your cost, of your project cost, you need to find the other amount. So this is a required cost share. What that means is that you come up with a $100,000 budget that you need for a proposal, and then the National Endowment for the Humanities will say, we will give you $75,000. Well, where are you going to find the other $25,000? That's when, if you're a junior faculty member just hired, you have a startup account, bam, it's in your research account. Maybe you don't have that money. Maybe you need to go talk to the department head. You need to go talk to your dean. So there's a little bit of negotiation going on there. If you're bringing in millions and millions of dollars, there's a good chance that people at UIC will find some cost share money for you, because it's such a big deal. If it's not required, you should not commit university funds. So sometimes people think that if they show that they have $10,000 to add to this grant, that it will increase their chances. The university does not want you to do that. If it's not required, do not commit any university funds. And sometimes you may end up cost sharing on your grant because you're working harder than you thought you needed to, or harder than you have promised to work. But that's fine, but that's not tracked. It's not committed. It just happens to happen. And so it's not tracked in the books. Effort. Effort is the amount of work that you and everybody else who is listed as personnel commit to and perform for the grant. It's usually expressed as a percentage. Depending if you have a 9-month contract or a 12-month contract, obviously the amount would be different, but it's usually expressed as 20% of your 9-month contract, for example. You will, instead of teaching a class, you will dedicate that time to this grant. And so the corresponding amount is what you get paid from the grant. Depending on your college, you will be released from teaching if you bring in a certain percentage of your salary. Lori, do you know what is it 20 or 25 in CUPPA?
I don't heard that.
Okay.
It's 15 for the first in UPP, and it's 15 for the first and 25 for the second.
There you go. So in LAS it was 20%. So if you bring in, if you put on your grant budget that you will receive 15% of your salary from the grant, you get released from teaching one course. In CUPPA it was 20, no, in LAS it was 20. I know Department of College of Education is 15. So colleges use different percentages to encourage you to apply for more grants. So just remember that if you are a type of person that gets to ask a lot to be on a lot of people's grants, and you have a 5% here and a 10% there, which happens a lot for people who are expert in their field, and you get asked to be consulting on a grant, your total can never be more than 100%. We've had audits and we've had very big issues with people that were committed over 100% to multiple grants, plus they were teaching, plus they had other things going on. So not allowed, obviously. The government will not believe that you have more than 100% of your time to work on anything. Limited competitions is pretty easy. It's when a foundation says that they will not accept more than one application from each university. And so before your application goes to this foundation, we need to run a mini competition internally to make sure that your application is the one that should be submitted. And so if you do a funding search and you find that your grant has a limited competition clause, you need to talk to Tony Halford because he needs to set up a mini internal competition. Now, a lot of times you might be the only person who wants to apply, but we have to allow other people to compete if they want to. A lot of times you'll be the only person, and so you apply to Tony. Tony runs a competition if needed, and you'll be then allowed to apply, which means that you have to add a couple months to your deadline. Okay, we're almost done. Letter of intent. Sometimes foundations want a letter of intent before you send a proposal. It's a genius stroke. They don't want to read 50 pages that they've never even wanted to fund a project like yours. You don't want to write 50 pages to send to somebody who didn't want to fund your project anyway. So you write a 3 to 5 page, you tell them what you're thinking about, and they'll tell you, we're interested, yes, please apply. Or they tell you, we don't fund this type of thing. Huge saving. Sometimes they request letters of intent that are non-binding. That's a strategy that foundations use to just know how many people are interested, how many people they need to ask for review committees and things like that. PI is the main applicant on a grant. You'll hear this word over and over. The PI, I'm co-PI, co-I. Co-PI, co-I are the same thing. These are multiple personnel on a grant. The other thing you'll hear a lot is R01, especially in health-related research. R01 has become the standard for tenure in a lot of health-related fields, and it is the most important research grant. R stands for research, it shows that you have become an independent researcher. You no longer need your mentor to be there on the grant with you. You no longer need other people to tell you what to do. You can now devise and implement a research project all on your own. You've grown up. Okay, so let's sum it up. You've identified your funding, you've written your grant proposal, you've created a budget. Now what you need to do is you have to get your proposal approved by ORS, the Office of Research Services. You are not allowed to go ahead and click the submit button on your own. Why? Because you may have grossly misjudged the amount of money that you need. So you promise to do all this work, and you've requested half of what you really need, and now you've promised an entity outside of UIC that you will do this, which is the university obviously doesn't want you to do. So there's a couple of screenings that happen before your grant is submitted. And the reason why I put up there, the good news is you're not alone, and the bad news is you're not alone. The good news is they will be reviewing your grant. So if there's something wrong with it, they will tell you. Well, the bad news is it takes time, so that adds a layer of complexity to all of the layers that you've already been going through, finding the funding, writing the proposal, getting the budget, and now there's another group of people that you have to work with. So you are actually, on most grants, not the applicant. The applicant is the Board of Trustees, and that is good because a lot of grants will say that they're not, individuals are not eligible, but that's fine because you're not applying as an individual. And also, it's good for international faculty that are on visas and are not U.S. residents or U.S. citizens, because again, as long as the applicant is the University of Illinois, the University of Illinois is recognized as a U.S. entity. So if you find an opportunity that says individuals are not eligible, no worry, because you can still apply. And we are a nonprofit 501c3. Okay, so the other thing you have in your packet is the PAF. This is a form that you fill out, that you send to the Office of Research Services when you want them to approve your grant before it's submitted. I highly vouch for this piece of paper because most people find that it's just one more thing they have to fill out, but actually this is pretty much an agreement between you, your department head, your college dean, that they all agree that you should be applying and getting this grant. So it kind of saves you later on when you get the grant, maybe on the second submission, and it's now a year and a half later, the department head has changed, the college dean no longer remembers who you are, but guess what? You have this piece of paper with everybody's signature, and they have agreed that you should have this year off, that you should have this funding that allows you to do your research. So I give a little pep talk for the PAF because not everybody loves it. Everybody signs this PAF, your collaborators and everybody. So if you got a lot of people in your grant, just plan accordingly because it might take a while to run around campus and get everybody's signature. It also tells you what